What's happening in the community around our fabulous lake? Find out with Martine Patterson every Monday between 9am and 12 noon. Lake Mac Life on Lake Macquarie FM 97.3.
It's just a soul kind of feeling, moving with the beat.
And you're with Martine on Lake Macquarie FM. Welcome aboard. This is the Lake Mac Life Show, where we are talking to all amazing, fantastic, beautiful people in our community. I can't wait to chat with Matt today. He's going to be up about his inspiration behind participating in the Big Freeze. That's in 2 weeks' time, Saturday the 23rd, and it's to fight motor neuron disease, MND. So we can't wait to have a chat with Matt, and he's got a gorgeous family and inspiring story to tell. Hope you can grab yourself a cup of tea, settle in for the long weekend. It is wet. It is cold. There's a lot of water on the road, so please take care. We're also going to chat to an amazing man, Alan Stevens. He's an international profiler and a communications specialist. He's been touted as the mentalist meets Dr. Phil, and he's got 30 years cumulative experience and skills in training and coaching, counselling, psychometric profiling, neuro-linguistic programming, also known as NLP, body language, micro and subtle expressions, and reading personality traits. So we want to know, how are our facial expressions telling us what we need to know in business and in our personal life? We've also got the amazing Pam coming up. She is from Dragons Abreast. She represents the Central Coast Group, and she is going to show how you can get involved as a supporter of breast cancer or even a breast cancer survivor by having fun, getting fit, raising awareness and supporting each other. We're touched every minute by breast cancer. 50 people are diagnosed daily. So this is a great organisation helping people out. Also, we've got Margot. She's back with Halley Happenings, our brilliant sponsor. So tune in all over the planet on your PC, your tablet, your mobile. Get onto our new website, Lake Macquarie FM. And also check out our YouTube channel for all your favourite interviews on the show. And we'll also give you a rundown on how we're going with all of the different charities that we are supporting. Of course, we're doing the Losing It for Lake Mac Life, and we are raising $5,000 for 5 local groups. So far, we've announced 3 of those groups sharing in the money, and it will be a RAFMI. It is Cystic Fibrosis Services up at the John Hunter Hospital, led by the very courageous Morgan, and also South Lakes Marketplace, who put out up to 400 baskets of food a week. That is such amazing work. So we're going to let you know how you can get involved and help us out on our journey. So stay tuned. We've got lots of fantastic music to get you into your long weekend Monday. And you're with Martine on Lake Macquarie FM, the new 97.3. That was Live with Lightning Crashes. And before that, we heard Barry Manilow. And I was just telling our next guest, Alan, I'm starting to have a bit of a fascination with Barry Manilow. Alan doesn't share that with me, do you?
No, as I said, there is medication for it.
There is medication. Alan Stevens, welcome aboard. You are a professional communications expert. I've been watching you feverishly on Facebook, on LinkedIn, social media, because you're out and about and talking about some really interesting things. So I'm so excited to have you on board.
Thanks very much. It's great to be here.
Yeah, you've worked for Disney, Gillette. You've been around the world. Yep. with this communications and teaching people how to build better relationships.
That's it. Everything's about, in life is about the relationships we build. So, I've worked with a lot of different organisations. I also work with families and, with schools and other areas. Because at the end of the day, nobody does anything with you. They don't buy your products, they don't buy your services. Well, they don't really buy you. If you're looking for a partner, for instance, you're actually selling yourself to the idea of you to them.
And I love this as well, because you actually have a workshop that helps people navigate the dating scene. I mean, and I'm telling you now, it's a minefield out there.
It certainly is.
It? And so and now that we do have social media and we've got the internet and so forth, there's a lot of dodgy people out there. There's a lot of genuine people out there, and trying to weed them out and keeping your sanity at the
That's
same
exactly
time.
right.
But you do have tips and tricks for this.
Well, when I looked at it, I started mainly helping business people to read other business people so they know how to talk to them. And it was just one more step then from there was to the dating scene. Is that person who they say they are? Are they a predator or not?
Yes.
At the same time, are we misjudging that person? Like,
Yeah.
how often have you gone out with somebody and you thought, oh, they're a psychopath?
Yes. I've had a few. I've got a list.
And I think probably all the listeners can all say, yeah, we've all had that experience.
Yes, yeah.
But how many times has it just been that the other person's personality is completely different to ours?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's a lack of understanding and communication
Exactly.
that causes us to feel that way.
Yeah, and I've also felt that, especially in being a counsellor myself, is that sometimes it doesn't things aren't working out. It doesn't mean that I'm bad at doing my job or they're bad. They're not connecting with me. We're just not gelling together.
That's
and I have to work out, well, who is a good colleague I can then move them on to do what they need and to progress and move forward.
That's exactly right.
And I think that's a really mature way of seeking things out, and you being able to give the skills to other professionals and business people to manage that.
That's it. You know, so if you're able to read, first of all, you've got to understand yourself. You can't read somebody else and make a judgment on them until you know where you sit in the bigger scheme of things.
Yes.
Because both you and I will look at a third person and we'll both view them differently based
much
on
so.
our own personalities and our past experiences.
Exactly.
So to actually measure them the right way, we need to know, well, where do I sit on the world scale? So the first thing I do is teach people how to understand themselves first. Then I teach them how to read the other person. And then the third point is change the way that you like to be spoken to the way that they want to be spoken to.
Right.
And once you've got that, the person who may not have been a support at all, we felt was totally alien to us, all of a sudden becomes an ally.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
This and this is through understanding yourself, being able to read the situation, and having more understanding of the other person, so that you have a goal to be genuine and come out with a win-win at the end.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, if we look at, I do a lot with kids, and when I'm talking to them and they're talking about the ones they don't like, it'll be the ones that they don't like doing the things that they like doing. They don't like the people that they like. So if you're talking to a 17-year-old or 16-year-old boy who's gone through puberty, etc., is now interested in girls and everything,
Yes.
and you ask
age.
them, well, do these guys over here like doing the same things that you do? No, they don't. Do they like the same girls that you like? No, they don't. Well, who does? Oh, my mates do.
Yes.
So when you apply for your job, all your mates are going to become your competition.
Exactly.
The other kids aren't going to be.
Wow, that's
And-
an interesting concept.
And think about it as well.
Yeah.
The girls that you like, your mates are also going to be chasing them.
Yes.
But these other guys aren't. So all of a sudden, when you then get to work and you're working with those other people who you didn't like before, they do the stuff that you don't like doing and vice versa.
You're a good team.
Yeah. Teams aren't
work-
made from the same people. They're made from the people who are opposite.
That's exactly right.
It's the
Goodness me,
differences.
that's a really interesting concept to do that. So you work with big business, small business. You do workshops and talks all over the world, and you're very active doing things online as well, which is the way the world is running
That's
at
it.
the moment. But also I love that you are local and you do one-on-one. You can do one-on-one as well as on Skype and things like that. And as you said, one of your passions is working with families, raising children, kids. That's one of your passions.
Exactly. You know, I've raised 3 boys on my own when their mother first left, and they were 4, 11 and 12. So I had to actually understand them.
Goodness.
And, I know what I went through at school. I got bullied a lot, and I hated school. Couldn't wait to get out.
Yeah.
My boys went through the same thing. Now I've got 5 grandkids. And I can see that nothing's really changed, except it's gotten worse.
Wow.
Because
really?
we've still got exactly the same education system as when I went to school. But we had a lot more resilience. The kids today don't have the resilience, so they're worse off.
Exactly. Yeah.
So being able to guide them. But I've had one gentleman who trying to get his head around what I was doing, and I said, right, let's make it real personal. Let me see your children. You've got photographs of them. And I've never met their children in real life when I was doing this. I just got their photographs. His son, I said, well, what's the relationship with your son? He said, I'm just not connecting with him. He's kind of manic. He's always all over the place. And I went, okay. Do you notice, one thing I noticed, he's got a music trait. I can see that in his face. So I said, try different music and see how he responds to it. There'll be some music that'll excite him, some that'll send him manic, and others that will quieten him down. So play with different music. And I said, when he's 5 years old now, but when he gets to 17 years old or he's studying for exams, you'll know what music's going to be good for him. You'll know what music you should keep away from him.
Wow.
And
How interesting.
He went, great. He did come back to me and complain. He said, Alan, talking to you cost me money. I go, why? He said, because we now have got dance lessons and we've got piano lessons. But he's done quite a number of testimonials, and this was about 4 years ago now that I did this, 3-4 years ago. And he said, the relationship we have, we dance around the kitchen, we have music sessions and everything goes. And he said, I've got a great bond with my son.
Isn't that great?
And I said, well, your daughter also at the age of 7 has got 2 traits I can see were going to be a real problem at school. She's a pioneer, so she wants to do things that nobody else has done, which is going to be not going to fit the system.
Yeah.
But she's got judgment variation, which means she'll come up with ideas that others can't see. But because she's also big picture, I can see at school, to come up with an idea, teacher will say, how does that work? She won't be able to explain it to the teacher if the teacher's analytical. So therefore, do that over and over. Won't be long before she's told, go sit down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I said that'll damage her.
And she will
emotions.
feel that she's failing and that she's not fitting in, and when really it's that dynamic and being able to teach our kids the way that they can respond to
That's
that.
it.
Yeah.
Well, what he did with her, he came back to me a little while later with his iPad, a couple of months later. He said, I'll read this story. And I just started laughing. It was a brilliant little story, kid story. I said, did you write this? He says, no, my daughter did.
The 7-year-old.
The 7-year-old.
Oh my goodness.
And I said, well, what are you doing with it? He said, well, we're getting the artwork done for it now. And at the age of 8, she became a published author on Amazon.
Oh my goodness me.
She
There you
also-
go, a pioneer.
That's it. And to add to that, she wanted to, because she's a pioneer, she climbed the Sydney Harbour Bridge with her dad when she was 8.
Oh my goodness.
Youngest person to ever do it.
What a sweetheart.
And at the same time, she said, Dad, you're a coach, because he's a real estate coach. And he said, yeah, why do you do that? Because I love people. And she said, well, so do I. He said, well, he's thinking, great, when she grows up, she wants to be a coach. Today.
Oh,
And
today.
She's now, that was 3 years ago, so she's now, 10 years old.
Yes.
And she's got her own blog.
Wow.
She quite often sits in, and both her and her brother sit in with Dad on his live video, Facebook Lives.
Yes, yeah.
And she started writing at the age of 7 affirmation cards, because he said, who's your clients? She said, oh, all the kids at school, they're all unhappy.
Wow.
So she wrote affirmation cards for all the kids. And he said, well, that's cost me money too. I went, why? And he goes, I said, the duplicating, the laminating. He said, no. He said, every new one she comes up with,
Yes.
she's charging me $1 for it. That was a deal she did.
Oh my goodness.
So he
She's
paid
an
her-
entrepreneur.
He has to teach her administration because she had a brother helping her, and she thought she kept everything. No, you've got to give your brother something.
Right. So now, she's got to pay the small people doing the real work. Oh my goodness,
But
amazing.
watching his kids, the bond between them. So with a lot of parents who say, well, my kids, I just don't understand them anymore. You understand at that early age and you build that relationship. He has no problems. His kids will always come to him and tell him what's going on. They'll always come to him for help. They'll always confide in him. And the relationship that he and his wife have with the kids is absolutely brilliant.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah, that's great work. So working one-on-one, you're not just coaching people, you're coaching families, because we are all connected at the
That's
end of
it.
the day. So you've talked about, knowing yourself first and getting to know yourself first. And then being able to read other people and the environment
That's
as
it.
well. Yeah. So how did you get to this place in your life where now you're teaching these skills to other people?
Well, actually, where I started from I was dreadful.
You were dreadful. Oh dear.
Originally, I was from Sydney and I came to Newcastle in 1975 for a 5-month temporary transfer.
Oh yeah.
And I was put in charge of a group of technicians because I worked with the old PMG that just became Telecom.
Yes.
And it was actually the month that became Telecom I came to Newcastle.
Wow.
And my second in charge was 38 and I'm 23.
Oh dear.
And
Okay.
one of the other gentlemen in the team had also been one of my seniors in Sydney. So I had to get them on side
Yeah.
and had no understanding about it. But I've always been wanting to get closer to people because I've been pushed away from them all my life and being bullied and everything. So I didn't want to actually hurt them. I just wanted to get to know people. So that was a natural starting.
But did you find initially there was that resistance? Here's this young guy from Sydney who's going to, you know, think he's going to be pushing us around.
And that was what I got at first.
Yeah.
Not so much from him because he was quite happy in the work that he was doing, but we built that relationship, and then we started bringing other team members into the group, and it grew in size.
Right.
And it grew very fast. And where the extra challenge came in, because it grew that fast, I became one of the youngest supervising technicians in Australia.
Wow.
And in that, then into as a principal technical officer. So there was a lot of people who looked at the fact that, who were older than me from other depots as well, going, what's he in charge for? He's not old enough.
Yeah.
So I had those issues as well. And then I joined the surf club in my mid-30s, thinking that, did my bronze medallion, and they taught me into being a patrol captain.
Wow.
And they gave me everybody that nobody wanted. So I said, thanks guys.
Thanks, guys.
That year we won Patrol of the Year for nobbies.
Wow, for
And-
nobbies, yeah.
And then they turned around and taught me to be the club captain.
Oh my goodness.
So I kept that squad together and promoted one of the guys into the captain's job, into the squad, and excluded myself from all the awards that year. I said, right, I'm not in the decisions. That same squad won the Patrol of the Year again.
Oh my goodness me.
So it proved that if you can take anybody, if you deal with them the right way, you can build rapport and loyalty, and they will shine, because most people want to feel valued and
part of the group as well. So it's building relationships with people one and on, but then building a team, and you're doing that really with families, but also with sporting groups,
That's
with
it.
businesses. Is it using the same sort of principles?
exactly the same
Exactly,
principles,
yeah.
because at the end of the day, we're dealing with human beings. And people talk about business to customers, business to business. Well, it's human to human.
It is.
Everything is.
It is. That's
Nobody
right.
buys a product or service off you, as I said, unless they trust you. So everything's about relationships. So many times people say, oh, and what do you bring to the table? I finally turned around one day and said, I bring the damn table. Because everything we do
Yes.
sits on that.
Yes.
So if
yes.
you're if you're a builder or whatever it might be, you have to build rapport with your clients before they actually take the service. They've got to trust you. They've got to believe that you can do the work.
Very much so, yeah. And a lot of people don't realise this, that they often do it unconsciously, don't they? They don't consciously say, look, I really like that bloke. Sometimes they do. They'll say, look, I really like that bloke. He sounded like he was a trustworthy, genuine guy. He might be a bit more expensive than the other guy, but I felt good rapport.
That's it.
And that's what. But often we don't put that down to sealing the business deal, do we? And in
That's it.
relationships as well.
Yeah, well, there's in a relationship, there's the biggest business deal of your life,
Very
isn't it?
much so.
Finding that partner, and but it's also then the maintenance of it, making sure you keep that person. So being able
Yes.
in how to not only how to talk to them in the first instance, but how you actually maintain that relationship, talk to them in the language that fits their love language, for instance.
Their love language, yeah.
But
And
knowing
it's
how
not
to do
just
that.
for you and for them, it's then more than likely the children that are
That's
involved
it.
as well, and trying to not only maintain a relationship but make it blossom and flourish, because often what then the children are seeing in your marriage, in your relationships, in the family dynamic is what they're going to seek when they
That's
then
it.
grow up. So you want to be as positive and have a wonderful relationship, but you need to do that for your children so that they can model that.
Yeah, well, looking at it from a father's point of view, you're your son's first hero,
Yes.
and if you've got daughters, then you're your daughter's first love.
Oh, very much so.
Because between the age of 0 and 6 is when all the imprinting is done. The kids don't reason it out, they learn by observation, so they see what goes on. So if they look at Dad and this is the way he behaves, then the boys think that's the way that the man behaves. That's what they've got to do.
Even if it's very negative behaviour.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how they see this is
Doesn't
this
matter
is
if it's
how
positive
we
or negative,
this
that's
is
why
how
they're
we
gonna do it.
work. This is how people work. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And if the girl will look at the father and go, well, that's what I can expect in men. So they gear themselves up to either attract a great male because that's what Dad was, or a male that's not so great, or they'll withdraw altogether. My first father-in-law, lovely guy, his father was a drunk. And when he grew up, Jack never drank at all.
Right.
His brother did. So his brother had the same problem as his father. He used to drink, but Jack was never a drinker. Both of them
Go
made their
either
choice.
way.
If Dad's like that, then that's all, you know, one said, well, that's my lot in life. The other one went, no, I'm not going to be like that.
Yes, yeah.
So at the end of the day, yes, we do have choice, but if we get the wrong imprinting all the way through, it's hard to make that proper choice later on. So as a parent, our job is, well, we're not sculptors, we're not carpenters, we're gardeners.
Gardeners.
So
Yeah,
when we
love that.
raise our children, it's not
Yeah.
turning them into a model of what we think they should be. Our job is to nurture them in a way in which they're protected, but they're
Yes.
also experiencing things. You don't wrap them up in cotton wool like
Sure.
a helicopter
Sure,
parent.
sure.
You actually allow them to express themselves, go through those things so they learn. Our job is to keep them safe, but our job is to help nurture them so that they can become the best version of themselves.
Love it. Yeah.
And that way, you know, how many men do you know that their sons are grown up just like Dad? Well,
Virtually all of them. Yeah,
George
yeah.
Bush Jr. and Senior, perfect example.
Perfect.
Clones.
You can't see them. You can't tell them apart, really.
Exactly.
You look at photos. That's exactly right. Yeah.
But others, well, I've got 3 sons and they're chalk and cheese and whatever you call a third version. They're completely different to each other.
Chalk cheese and the cheese board. Yeah.
And you know, one thing I'm proud of, because I've got 3 boys I love and respect. They've grown up to be great men.
Beautiful.
Respectful of their wives, all with their own children and everything else. And so along the way, you know, people say, oh, I did a great job raising them, but I had some really great material to work with.
Sure.
I didn't mould them. What I did was nurture them, and they developed into the men that they were going to be, had the full potential to be.
And I think it's important, you know, you're coaching parents a lot of the times and families how to talk with some of these very difficult teenage years. But as you were saying, it is that bit beforehand that we are building up that child, imprinting that child, and it's to be mindful about what we're feeding them.
Exactly.
So that we don't have the problems later on, or we can minimise the problems, or we can work through the problems. Because without problems, you know, without a storm, we can't have rainbows.
Exactly.
So we can't have smooth life the whole way through. But it's how we manage those, I guess.
Exactly, and it's, you know, if we don't nurture the children the right way in the early stages, you know, because as I said, I looked after the 3 boys on my own. I'm not naturally a nurturer. You know, a male is more the protector and everything, because we look at the traditional roles. So one of the things I did, I had other women around most of the time, but I always looked at, well, who are going to be good role models? I didn't want to become their mum.
Sure.
But I wanted somebody they could actually learn from as well, you know, be treated the right way. So I was pretty lucky in having some really great girlfriends along the way and other women around me as well. And so that helped there. As they got older, then it was a case of, well, now being able to talk to them the way that they needed to be spoken to. I didn't know this stuff when my boys were younger. I think mostly I did it through intuition.
Yes, yes,
You know,
yeah.
More luck than anything else, I'd
Yeah,
say.
sure.
But now I teach parents how to actually do that, how to look at their child and understand from just their facial features exactly what their personality is, how they like to speak, how they like to be treated.
You know, it's so important, and you know, you've talked about your own experience about how you have had, you know, relationship breakdowns, bringing up children as a sole father, as a sole parent, and the challenges that has. And this is a very common story now. I think it's something like, is it 90% of marriages fail? I mean, it's absolutely
I'm not quite sure of
astronomical.
the actual number, but I know it was almost as popular as marriage.
Divorce, exactly. Exactly. So I'm, you know, this is a problem that our kiddies are being brought up by sole parents often, who, as you say, you're the father, you can't really replace the mother, and often, you know, there is so much animosity between the parents and the families when there is a breakdown in marriage or relationships as well, and how we are harming the kiddies.
Yeah, well, see, it depends on your focus. Because the whole thing is, when you're emotional, you can't think straight. So you're angry at your ex-partner and everything else.
Yeah.
And so that's where the focus is. One of the things, I think one of my sons actually said one day, he was about to walk out the door going to school. He stopped, he turned around, he said, "Dad, you know, we're lucky to have you."
Yeah.
And I went, "What? Where's this coming from?" And I said, "Why?" I said, "You know, your mum and I divorced and everything else." And he goes, "Yeah, but you don't badmouth her. When we're at her place, she doesn't badmouth you.
Perfect. Yeah.
And I went, but what about your mates? They were their parents. Oh, the parents are all fighting all the time.
Yeah.
He said, didn't you realise that, you know, because I worked at home, but I go to the gym and I come home about the time they were coming home from school. There's 15 kids in my house.
Yeah.
And he said, you
They're
know,
all escaping, fighting.
they're all coming over here because they enjoy being here.
Yeah.
And they'd all take off a little while after I got home. I'd come back to the gym, you know, looking like I'm really worn out. And but the whole thing was that that's where he was getting his understanding. He said, well, look, you know, you don't badmouth each other. And I always say to parents, look, what's the most important thing in your life? It should be your kids. Now, you brought them into the world, you have a responsibility and everything else. I looked at it and I went, okay, my first wife, I should say, we've had a couple of, well, she needed somewhere to stay for a period of time. It was only going to be 3 months, which ended up 3.5 years. That was only last year she moved out.
Wow.
My boy is now, my oldest one's close to 40. But people said, well, how could you actually allow her into the house and everything else? I went, well, I can be angry at her for the, you know, leaving and everything else, but I started to understand why she left and the things that was, you know, because you got to get away from blaming. You got to look at what the situation is, understand that, and don't look for who's right and who's wrong.
And make some peace with yourself so you can have a peaceful life and and
well, I
move
looked at it
on.
and thought the best way to deal with this was what did she bring into the marriage, not what she sort of took out of it. And as I said earlier on, I've got 3 boys I love and respect. I wouldn't have had those without her. So therefore, I looked and thought, right, I can have a relationship with her for the sake of these boys.
Yes.
And that allowed me to change the attitude.
Respect you and most likely have a more positive relationship with you because you're not bad-mouthing her as an ex-partner of what she did, of what you did together and things like that. You know, that they have more respect for you and more admiration and because of that they trust you more as a person.
Don't get me wrong on that. I'm human like anybody else. She pushed my buttons a few times and I have had a few things to say in that. But as I said, you know, for
and
the
you can't
boys
be a doormat either.
No,
I mean,
right.
we're not advocating being doormats, but at the same time, having some, you know, respect and dignity as well for yourself.
For the boys to have a happy
children.
life and respect the women in their lives, they really had to respect their mother.
Yeah.
So as the father, that was my responsibility. So, but as I pointed out to them, for her to have their respect ongoing, she had to earn it daily.
Yeah.
So when she's done a few things that make, you know, they're now old enough to understand all this stuff, you know, 30s and 40s, or towards the 40s, it's a case of, well, yeah, I can talk to them a bit more openly about that now because there's still a bit more teaching to go.
Exactly. And I tell you what, you've got to work on relationships. You've got to work on marriages and partnerships, whether they be personal or business or whatever, sporting. You've got to, it's a constant working on it. It just doesn't, you know, happen and then you can, you know, you come to a good spot and then you can walk away from it. And that's why I like coming back to a lot of the stuff that you have on YouTube, that you have on your Facebook page, because I think we need to remember that we just don't fix things. As you say, we're gardeners. We've got to nurture. We've got to, you know, water it. We've got to put fertilizer on it. Sometimes, you know, that's crap. You know, literally. You've got to plant seeds. You've got to prune things. You've got to pull off a few snails and a few bugs. But you know, we've got to nurture things and keep learning. So I would encourage anyone to get onto your Facebook page. What is the title of it?
Well, my website's probably the best place first of
yep.
all, and that's alanstevens.com.au.
And it's ALAN Stevens
STEVENS.com.au. That has access there. Then there's my Facebook page. I can never remember which is which. I've got a business one, which I think is Reading Faces.
That's it. The Reading Faces one. That's it. Yeah, on Facebook.
And I've got a personal one, which is what's that now? Celebrity Profiler, I think it is. And then I have the I've got group ones as well, so that people want to come in and have discussions. So I'm all about sharing with people so that they understand, to get them thinking about things differently.
Exactly.
And then they come back for more, which means that, as you asked before, I do train one-on-one with people.
Yes, yeah.
But I've also put together online courses because a lot of people around the world said, well, we can't meet your time frame.
Exactly.
They weren't up to
Yeah.
doing the full course with you. They wanted to just build relationships,
Yeah.
or they wanted to find the right partner.
Or get a taste of,
Yeah.
of learning and opening it up. I brought my 13-year-old son, as you know, along to one of your workshops, and it was about face profiling, and he was blown away. It just opened up an area that he hadn't even thought existed, and now he is really interested. He gets on your web page and looks at different things you have. He picks and chooses what he relates to. You know, and he tells his friends about you know, his experiences. So, you know, I'd encourage, you know, people's personal development, but also for their kiddies, for their family, to bring them along, just to give them a taste, plant the seed,
That's it.
because who knows where it might go.
Exactly. Well, I trained 2 boys late last year, and when I asked them, they were 13 and 14, and I asked the 14-year-old first of all, 14, 15. You know, I asked the 14-year-old, how are you using it? And he said, well, I'm profiling the teachers. I went, how's that working for you? And he goes,
They're marking my work, yes.
He's a really likeable rogue, you know, he's a really cheeky little side. And he said, well, I'm actually reading the teachers. And I said, well, what's it doing for you? He said, well, I understand them better. He said, I'm getting away with a lot more and having a lot of fun with it.
I love him. I love him.
The older one, the 15-year-old, I said, well, what are you using it for? He said, I'm actually profiling the other kids. And I went, how's that working? He said, I'm understanding them a lot more. And I said, and what's the understanding giving you? He said, tolerance.
Wow.
So you can see
Isn't
how
that
this now,
interesting?
when you
Yeah.
can read the other person, understand them, and know how to actually change the way to speak to them, it's hard to bully somebody you got to know and like. I had a couple of mobile apps. They don't work on the iStore now because they keep changing the operating systems, and I haven't upgraded them. But I had a school in San Marino who, she had year 12 students who were reading at elementary school level as far as their English went, because it was mainly Latino. And so she couldn't get them to read anything. But she read an article by Paul Ekman, who did all the research on the little micro expressions, the little twitches on the face.
Yeah.
And she said, well, they got excited. She said, I found you on the web. Your stuff is just so simple to follow. And I go, yeah, well, that's why I write it.
Yeah.
I don't write it through ego. This is not to impress people. This is more so that people can actually use it and get some results.
Yeah.
So I said, well, use the mobile app. She said, well, what will that do? She said, well, they've got to read the instructions because the app doesn't do it for them. Then they do the profile, which is what they want to do.
Yes.
And if they're doing something that they want to do, they're more likely then to do the reading.
Reading, yeah.
But then
How
when
interesting.
you've done the profile, you have to read the results. Because first one will tell you about that person's personality, and therefore you know how to speak to them. The second app, you profile the other one, then you profile yourself, and it tells you how to change the way you like to be spoken to the way they want to be spoken to. Which meant now, how do you know that works? These kids had to sit down with kids that they'd profiled and speak to them and see if it worked.
Wow, I love it.
So that was working on
love it,
improved
yeah.
communicate, or reading first of all,
Yes.
verbal communication, and reducing bullying in the same flow.
Yeah, and learning life skills. I mean, you don't just leave those at when you leave school at 3 o'clock. You're then bringing that home. You're then bringing that on into your adulthood, your work relationships. This has been a wonderful chat, Steve, Alan, and I appreciate you coming in. I know that your other passions in life is bullying.
Yep.
Well, reducing bullying as well as domestic violence, and I'd love to have another chat with you another day about that, but I'm going to let you get back to it because I know that you've got a busy afternoon as well. So thank you so much for coming aboard.
Cool.
I appreciate that, and very interesting things.
Thank you very much, and yes, I'd love to come back and do another talk with you, and I've really enjoyed today.
Thanks so much. I am going to play one of my favourites, Bee Gees, Staying Alive.